We all know that the Conservatives love to pitch themselves as the party of low tax. If you want to keep more of your money, then vote Tory, or at least that's what they'll say. But the reality since 2010, well, it's very different, isn't it? First with the Liberal Democrats, and then by themselves after 2015, they've been the party of high taxes for ordinary people and low taxes for the very wealthiest. The evidence? Increasing VAT while cutting corporation tax, capital gains, and the income tax of the very highest earners. But why do ordinary people accept this? Why is it seen as generally okay that the very wealthiest people comparatively pay the least tax? Well, fundamentally it's reproduced by a myth which says that if you tax the wealthiest wealth producers too much, then jobs won't be created, wages will go down, Britain's economy will suffer, and that in turn, ordinary women and men will suffer too. But is that really true? Do the numbers stack up? Is there a correlation between having low rates of corporation tax and being an economic powerhouse? Britain is set to have 17% corporation tax by 2020. Donald Trump said he wanted the US to be lower. Theresa May countered by saying, if that happens, well, we would mirror it. It's hugely important to the Tories that we have the lowest rate of corporation tax amongst the major industrial countries. But it's pretty obvious when you look at the data that there's no correlation between low corporation tax and innovation, productive, exporting, dynamic companies, and good jobs for workers. Look at some of the countries with the lowest corporation tax in the world. We've got Uzbekistan at 8%. We've got Hungary at 9% and Mongolia, which exports not all that much, at 10%. Then there's Bahrain and the Cayman Islands at 0%. So that's what we see when you have very low rates of corporation tax. You name me one company from those countries, I think you're going to struggle. But what about countries which are our competitors? The big exporting industrial nations which Britain likes to think of itself sitting alongside. Well, we've got the United States. Corporation tax there, guess what it is? 35%. Germany, 30%. And Japan, 30%. These countries produce exporting companies the likes of which Britain can only dream of. There are no Simons or Bosches or Toyotas or Googles or Apples in the UK, and yet we have corporation tax far lower than any of these countries. What's more, corporation tax the year that Margaret Thatcher left office was 32%. So even under Margaret Thatcher, corporation tax was far higher than where it is today and was much closer to where our industrial rivals have it. So what's Britain doing with having corporation tax at 17%? Why is it so low? It's not helping wages, they've gone down over the last 9 years. It's not helping GDP per hour or per person working, that stayed flat. It's not helping productivity. It's not helping exports. Who's it helping? It's helping the back pockets of the very wealthiest people in this country. And in the meanwhile, the average British person is missing out. The taxpayer is funding these cuts for nothing to the tune of tens of billions of pounds a year. And what about income tax? What about those taxes we make the very highest income earners pay? In Britain, the highest rate of income tax is 45%, something Labour would likely want to increase to pay for the things they've talked about over the last few weeks, eliminating tuition fees, helping the NHS, building the kind of infrastructure Britain needs, giving credit to small and medium-sized businesses. Well, the funny thing is, like corporation tax, actually, the best performing economies also see high income tax earners pay more than what we have over here. In Germany and Japan, the very highest earners have to pay 50%. Meanwhile, in the US, federal government takes 39.6% and states a little bit more. In California, arguably the world's innovation capital, it's 51%. Tell me that Britain's producing the kinds of companies that California is. The first thing that Margaret Thatcher did in 1979 and her Chancellor Geoffrey Howe is, yes, they reduced income tax for the very wealthiest people. But guess what it fell to? 60%. And it stayed there for 9 years. For almost a decade under Margaret Thatcher, the highest rate of income tax was 60%, 15% higher than today. So just like corporation tax, there's no precedent in Britain or elsewhere for the logic that the elite establishment rigged 1% want to tell you, which is low taxes mean good business, good jobs, good productivity. It is the complete opposite. You're being lied to. Don't accept it. Over the next several weeks, as Labour outline policy proposals that many people will like, right-wing journalists, or should I say Tory press officers will talk about a magical money tree and how, while all these things are nice, they're simply impossible.
Where is the money going to come from for these announcements? Of course, they can pick it off their magic money tree.
The truth is, we don't need a magic money tree to do these things. We could just increase corporation tax, the highest rate of income tax, to what we see in Germany, Japan, and the United States, or what we had here 10 to 15 years ago, or even, dare I say, under Margaret Thatcher. In reality, yes, that would raise tens of billions of pounds a year. And what could it pay for? We could scrap tuition fees. We could reintroduce student grants. We could build social housing. We could pay nurses and doctors more. We could employ more of them so they don't suffer nervous breakdowns. We could have ambulance response times not getting out of control. We could have people not having to wait months, if not years, for important surgeries which make their quality of life terrible. We could have infrastructure which helps businesses. We could bring energy and transport into public ownership, meaning that people's bills and railway tickets aren't unaffordable. We could do all of that with relatively easy things. This is not impossible or utopian or fantastical. This is all practical, easy, sensible. The fact that the 1%, the people that stand behind this rigged economy, want you to think otherwise tells you everything you need to know. You deserve so much better. We all do. Don't let them get away with it anymore.